It's a constant debate amongst Steelers fans and Steeler Nation asking, will the Steelers draft a quarterback in the first round? Will they need to trade up to get one? Will it be Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, Matt Corral? All these questions will continue to be asked until the Steelers make their first selection of this NFL draft. But the big move of the Eagles and the Saints swapping first round picks changes the landscape, and it further adds to where I think things have been going for a while now, that I highly doubt that the Steelers first round pick is one of those quarterbacks unless something crazy happens. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Joining me today will be Wes Euler of Steeler Nation Radio. We'll be talking about the landscape of how quarterbacks could fall in this NFL draft, how that means that Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin need to react, and other aspects of the NFL draft, as well as a Steeler that was new last year being gone this year, and other aspects of your favorite team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel to get all of our daily content, plus our breaking news updates. If you want to help out the show even further, give us a 5-star review with a positive comment on Apple Podcasts, and you'll get a special shout out at the end of the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today and tell them that Locked On sent you. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Wes Euler, what's up, my dude?
What up, cousin CC? You're back from Denver and still not taking a day off. You're unbelievable.
I don't know how I do it sometimes, and I literally mean that. Wes knows I was in Denver. That's where I was, in a hotel. If you saw the Monday episode, also if you saw the Friday episode of the Locked On NFL podcast. So there's a reason why I didn't know that Marlon Mack signed with the Texans over the weekend. I was quite busy. So apologies to all those who. I did a segment yesterday where I was talking about, hey, Wes, we were not doing those things. That was water I was drinking. Anyways, let's get right into what's going on in the NFL right now, Wes. It was a major trade, a blockbuster trade, but a weird one because no players were involved. It was all picks. Right. This is very rare in when it comes to swapping around these types of picks. Now, the Saints and the Eagles, two teams, kind of in unique positions. Now, the Eagles came into this. They had 3 picks in the first round, I believe. And they gave away 2 of them while getting 1 back, as well as another for next year. But the trade encompasses this: the Eagles giving away the 16th overall pick and the 19th overall pick of the first round, as well as a 6th round pick. The Saints, in return, give the Eagles their 18th overall pick, a 3rd and a 7th, and then a first next year and a 2nd in the 2024 NFL draft. So all that to say, there is a new draft order in the NFL. Basically, now the Saints have two picks at 16 and 19. The Eagles have 2 picks at 15 and 18. And it's interesting to me that the Saints were willing to give up so much future capital for this year, Wes. And it only further confirms to me that there's going to be some serious moves made for the quarterbacks in this NFL draft.
Yeah, buddy, I think that's it, right? I don't think you have to speculate with this one very much. It feels like the New Orleans Saints aren't done, and this is the first step to them kind of gearing up to go and get their quarterback, because now they're at 16, now they're at 19. It's a lot easier to package those 2 picks and move up and get your guy than in the space that they were in before. I think it signals that New Orleans is going to be aggressive and trying to go get a quarterback. I think it also signals any of those illusions or any of those best case scenarios we had for the Steelers where, hey, maybe Malik Willis falls to 20. Hey, maybe Kenny Pickett's still there at 20. Hey, maybe pick 20 rolls around and there's only 1 quarterback off the board so far. I just don't think that's the case. When you look at it now, just in the top 10, Detroit could easily take a quarterback. Carolina could easily take a quarterback.
Yep.
Seattle could easily take a quarterback.
Yep, that's just the top 10.
And now you have New Orleans with the capital to maybe go dancing with the Giants and the Jets, both who have 2 picks in the top 10 and have stated that they're not interested in quarterbacks. The Washington Commanders, or whatever they'll decide to call themselves by the end of the month, they're at pick 11. Like, this is, you and I think, talked about this last week or maybe the week before. The closer and closer you get to the draft, the thirstier and thirstier everyone gets for quarterbacks. And I think, Chris, now there is a really good chance that there's 3 guys off the board at the quarterback position by the time the Steelers are on the clock at 20. And this is just the first step towards what feels like a lot of teams who have been playing their hand that they're not that interested in the quarterbacks, but draft day comes around and it turns out there's still 3 guys who end up going in the top 15, the top 20.
And you and I have talked about this on the show before. Like, so any Locked On Steelers listeners knows this ain't breaking news. That the quarterback to the position is going to be hard to get for the Steelers if without trading up. And trading up is one discussion. We'll skip past that. But just looking at the probability, because I know there's a lot of people that are saying, oh yeah, they'll just get one of those guys. I don't see the Steelers passing up on a defensive star if the top 3 quarterbacks are gone in their eyes. Now, of course, there could always be a shakeup. We didn't expect Mitch Trubisky, current Steeler, to be the 2nd overall pick of his NFL draft class. Right. For example, if the Lions went and picked Sam Howell at number 2 overall, everything would change. We'd all be like, wait, what just happened? Like that, something like that. And I'm not ruling that out. Because
at this point, a few years ago, we were all shocked when it started to come out that, like, hey, the Browns are probably going to take Baker Mayfield 1st overall. And we were all like,
what?
Wait,
like,
what?
Why?
Of all those quarterbacks, they're going with him 1st overall. So, I mean, something crazy like that certainly still could happen.
Yeah, imagine them with Josh Allen right now, or Lamar Jackson. My goodness.
Or Lamar Jackson.
Or Lamar Jackson. Either one of those, would be a nightmare for the Browns would have. But they picked Baker Mayfield so high. But again, the point here being, most years, there is a crazy run at quarterback. There's the occasional years, like the year like EJ Manuel and your boy Geno came out. It was like there's some years they don't bite, but
2013 was like that too. There weren't a ton of guys in 2013 at the quarterback position early on.
Right. It's just, wait, was 2013, was that Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota?
Or 2013, actually, I think was the class that you were just referencing.
Okay,
Yeah, it was EJ Manuel. I think was the only 1st-round quarterback. Is that right?
You're right.
Geno Smith was early 2nd round.
You're right. Yeah. That was that year. It's tough to put it back when
they all blend
quarterbacks
together at this point.
It's different. Like we remember Dan Marino was drafted in '84. Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, 2004. Because great quarterback classes. But when you're going back through mediocre quarterback classes, man, that stuff blends together.
It could have been 2013. It could have been 1917. I don't know.
But point being, we're looking at this upcoming draft class, and there is rumblings of some people saying, "Hey, quarterback's not as important as you think. Those guys are going to fall down." This move to me shows the Saints are serious about making sure that they're gonna be in play for a quarterback this year, while still getting another skill player that's going to add to that mix, or just having the ammunition to move up if they hear their quarterback is about to be off the board. So that's an interesting discussion. I want to talk to you further about these quarterbacks and how it plays into the Steelers strategy here. So we're going to do that in a second here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I got to talk to you guys about BetOnline.net. It's your number one source for all your betting needs and your sports information. And you can find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championship odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores, and all more. Baseball's starting up this week, so if you want to get on that action, BetOnline.net is your best place to play. As well, yeah, sure, college basketball's done, but the NBA and NHL's playoffs are getting ready to ramp up, and there's some big money opportunities for you out there. So go to their website, betonline.net today, and you can use your mobile device or check out their website on your desktop or laptop, and you'll learn all about the trends in the action on their website, which is BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Wes Euler of course, Steeler Nation Radio and the Ears and Beers podcast. Now, Wes, the Steelers' need for a quarterback of the future is there. And again, I'm not dismissing the idea that they want, that they would love to have a quarterback from this class. be there at 20, because I think that's part of where this gets lost in the conversation. And I peep Steelers Twitter. Don't think that I don't, just because I'm not always jumping in the arguments. I just don't got time for y'all sometimes. Sometimes people just be firing off, and
I'll be on Twitter too much, man.
I just be like, look, man, I got work to do. But that's why I'm preparing for these shows. But point being, with I see the dialogue and I see the back and forth, and a lot of people are saying, oh, they love the quarterbacks. And yeah, Mike Tomlin does love some of these quarterbacks. The Steelers, I'm sure they like the leadership of Kenny Pickett. I'm sure they like the ceiling of Malik Willis. I surely like the potential of Desmond Ridder. I'm sure there's elements to Sam Howell's game that if he fell into the right spot of the draft, they would like it. I'm sure there's elements to Matt Corral's game that they love, but they also know you don't stare at the shiny object in the jewelry store. You go in with a plan, with knowing your budget, in this case your draft capital, knowing your other needs. You don't buy the $50,000 ring when you don't have a house to put your fiance in yet. So there's a situation where I could see the Steelers definitely drafting a quarterback. If the unthinkable happens and a lot of those quarterbacks fall to 20, sure. But I more so see the possibility of them being a day 2 pick this year if Sam Howell or Matt Corral or one of those guys is available at that point. And if not, then I think it's like a Bailey Zappi type of quarterback on day 3 of the NFL draft. But
Carson Strong
is a great example. He has a huge arm. He'd be an interesting prospect to at least bring into camp and see what he has. But Wes, I want to get this thought from you. Is this the time that the Steelers should be looking at, hey, let's build up our ammunition for this quarterback draft class? Because again, the Saints trading and making this move to get that other pick and those other 2 picks, it shows to me that they're arming up because they're hearing things that other teams are willing to make the moves. It just, to me, when I know that that's not a big need for me right now. I mean, it's a need, but this isn't the time that I'd want to make that move.
Right.
I don't need. It's like when you have a pair in poker, and you see that a flush and a straight are on the board, could be on the board, and what? I like my chance. I like my hand, but I'm not gonna push it all in on this hand.
Right. Yeah. No. You know what? And I think you're absolutely right. And I love that analogy, by the way. And maybe we've been looking at this the wrong way throughout this process, right? Like from the combine and now leading up to the draft, where we've been talking about how there's not that guy in this class, we don't think,
Right.
And look at last year, and there were 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 15, and that's not going to happen this year. Maybe we were looking at it the wrong way, whereas there's always teams that need quarterbacks. We know, again, it's a quarterback-thirsty league. There's always going to be teams that are going to talk themselves into guys. And maybe, Chris, since they only look at it and think that there's 2, maybe 3 guys, it creates more of a sense of urgency as opposed to last year where, again, every 3rd pick of the top 15 was a quarterback. Teams are sitting there, and you've got, Detroit, you've got Carolina, you've got Seattle, you've got the Commanders, you've got New Orleans. Let's say 5 teams, right, that are in play for a quarterback, and they're looking at it and they're saying, all right, we really like Willis or Pickett, and we would dance with Ridder, we think, too. Well, okay, there's 5 of us that are in this market, are going to be really aggressive, and there's only 2.5 guys that we like.
Right.
So maybe that's the scope of this, where it creates more of a need. It's the whole supply and demand thing. When there's more supply of 5 first-round quarterbacks last year that teams like, they're willing to be more patient. But when there's only 2 quarterbacks that teams like, or that they're willing to at least spend, first-round top 20 draft capital on, it creates more of an urgency. And maybe we're seeing a little bit of a bidding war in a sense, right? Where all these teams are going to start to line up because they either want Willis or Pickett, and that's it. Or, again, maybe Ritter's worked his way into that conversation, or does here in the next 3 weeks as well, too. That's been in the back of my mind today since we saw the New Orleans trade with the Eagles as well. Like, maybe we were all looking at this wrong. Maybe we thought since the quarterback class didn't have a dude, some of these guys would slide down and there would we'd have to wait a little bit, and maybe there's not even a quarterback taken in the top 10. Whereas maybe we should have looked at it the other way. There's only 2 premium names in this class, Willis and Pickett, and teams were always going to be aggressive to try and get one of those guys, the teams that really do need a quarterback.
I think that's a healthy way to look at it, because teams always need a quarterback. I mean, over the years, we've seen, the Steelers have benefited over the years from, or at least brought former first round picks onto their roster to see how they do. Look at Dwayne Haskins. The where he was picked by Washington when he was. Remember Paxton Lynch? He was a first round pick by the Broncos way back when, and the Steelers brought him in as like the fourth arm in camp. This happens a lot, and I think someone, I forget who pointed it out, but someone pointed out that from 2009 to 2016, no quarterback drafted in the first round was still with the team that drafted them after last season. So like. This is uncommon that teams reach for quarterbacks. I mean, Josh Rosen. I mean, people were talking about how he was going to be this smart, high-brained quarterback.
He's Aaron Rodgers 2.0.
He can't even get on the field. So there's always reaches, and I think that what's part of it is the hype that gets sold. On a player. Daniel Jones, I think, is another example of that. And guys that get propped up, but teams want to take their swings at quarterbacks because and some of that may be also. You look back on recent years, there are the hits like getting Russell Wilson in the third round for the Seahawks. Those type of things. Like, teams just sit there, man. If we could just get our quarterback.
They see how Josh Allen has transformed the Bills and how Joe Burrow has transformed, and how it seemingly happened overnight for those two franchises where they went from mediocre to contending for Super Bowls.
The Ravens saving John Harbaugh's job with Lamar Jackson.
And maybe we were naive on that too. Like the Carolina Panthers, I think, are a good example in that regard.
Yeah.
You think Matt Rule, who's coaching for his NFL future this year, is gonna sitting there and saying, I think I'll be patient on quarterback. Like, there's no chance.
I'm good with Sam Darnold.
There's no chance. In fact, I think Matt Rule's thinking the opposite. Matt Rule's thinking, you know what? Say I get Kenny Pickett at pick 6, right? Say someone trades up, Lions take him, maybe the Texans are willing to part with that pick, the Jets, the Giants, and Malik Willis goes in the top 5, right? Hypothetical here. Matt Rule's sitting there and he's saying, I'm taking Kenny Pickett because if we show any signs of life this year, that's buying me another year.
Yes.
I could take Kenny Pickett. We could go 6-11, right? Because there's 17 games. We could go 6-11, quick math. But if we win 3 of our last 4 games and show life down the season, and Pickett looks like he's figuring it out all of a sudden, and we look like we're in a better place heading into the offseason, I'm good. I just bought myself more time. But if I go out there with Sam Darnold and I go 6-11, I'm toast.
Right.
I think that's a real thing too in this conversation, that a lot of these coaches that are on the hot seat, and I'm using air quotes here if you're watching on YouTube, coaches that might have a little bit of a short leash, I think sometimes they think too, first round quarterback, early quarterback, it buys me another year. Because as long as we can show some signs of growth throughout the season, they're going to bring me and they're going to bring the quarterback back.
I agree. A lot of teams think that way. A lot of coaches think that way. And yeah, the lifespan of a coaching staff, that's definitely on people's minds. That's some people might think, oh, they're just coaches, they're just doing their jobs. No, they're thinking, how do I establish a new tone with this organization? How do I
Matt
put
Rule
my
wants
footprint?
To keep coaching on Sundays. He doesn't want to go back to Saturdays, baby.
Exactly. And again, for all those who might be wondering, like, well, does Matt Rule really like Kenny Pickett? I was there for Kenny Pickett's pro day. He was the only head coach not named Mike Tomlin who was there at Kenny Pickett's pro day.
It's a pretty short commute for Tomlin too.
And right, Tomlin walked across the hall. But when he was there, he was examining his hands. He was joking around with them. And for those who don't know, Kenny Pickett's first school he ever committed to coming out of high school was Temple, where Matt Rule was head coach.
Matt Rule was the coach before he went to Baylor. Yep.
And then he decommitted and went to Pitt. So there's a lot of aspects there that could really work for Kenny Pickett there. And there's other teams that could want Kenny Pickett.
Sure.
If Kenny Pickett slips past the top 10, the Saints, I think, would be an ideal situation for a quarterback like him. Not a super strong arm, but a smart mind, a decently athletic quarterback who can make good reads and
good weather conference.
Exactly. You're playing in a dome. You're going to have Michael Thomas in the slam. Hey, yeah. And so this is a chance where you could say, hey, but again, if Kenny Pickett ain't taken up there, it's probably because some other quarterbacks were taken up there. And
right.
that's again just why I don't see the Steelers being in play. We'll examine how they would trade up or whether they would trade up another day, because there's a lot of other factors that calculate into that I want to talk to Tony Serino about tomorrow. But Wes, I want to talk to you about edge rushers for a sec, because a guy who was a Steeler last year and made some impactful plays, is no longer a Steeler. We're going to talk about who that was as far as the edge rushers in just a sec here. But first, we got to talk to you guys about rockauto.com. Rock Auto is the place where you go to save time and money when you're needing a new parts on your car or your truck. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership when you can get it much cheaper at Rock Auto? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 when you go to the chain store, but you can go on rockauto.com right now and get it for $216. Rock Auto is a family-owned business, and it's been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you could need from brake parts to tail lamps to motor oil and even new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find their solution for your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Be sure to write "Locked On" in there. How did you hear about us box, so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're keeping it rolling here with Wes Euler on our Tuesday episode. We messed up the alliteration again this week, Wes. Tony wasn't available, so we had to push him to Wednesday. So it's not your fault, but I am disappointed that we weren't able to get our alliteration going this week. But Wes, another news, minor news, not major news, but Taco Charlton, guy that came in for the Steelers this year, made one start this past year, and he did okay. Had a half of a sack, 18 tackles. Was able to get a couple quarterbacks in. Had a pass deflected that led to an interception for Joe Schobert in a huge way that played a major factor in the Steelers beating the Tennessee Titans, who I believe were the 1 seed this year in the NFL in the AFC playoffs.
They were.
That being one of the biggest upsets of the season. He found a way to be a good rotational player with the Steelers, but no one's having their heart broken. It would have been nice to have him back, and I think a lot of Steelers fans, when he announced, "Hey, I'm going to the Saints," who dat? I'm mixing up the who days and the who dats. Who day's weird. Who dat's actually kind of cool. Who day, that's posers. I don't know.
Yeah, who talks like that in Cincinnati? I mean, what are we doing here?
It's weird, but when it comes to Taco Charlton being gone, it's not a crusher, but it does open up the question: what are the Steelers going to do for depth on the edge? Now, they already have Genard, Avery, who they signed, guy off the Eagles. He's been on the Browns. He's undersized, but very athletic, very quick, and could be an option to help on the edge and off-ball linebacker. But Wes, what's the seriousness that they need to approach getting depth for edge rusher behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith? Because they could do it in free agency or the NFL draft or both.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Avery there. I like Genard Avery as a rotational guy, as a depth piece. He's got production in his 4-year NFL career. He started 17 games, 15 games, 17 games, something like that. But he's got close to 100 tackles. He's got like 7.5 sacks. He's forced some fumbles, some tackle for losses. He's a guy who, despite not getting a ton of spin, has still been able to show up on stat sheets and have some production. So I like him as, a bullet in your holster, if you will. But I think you need another one of those guys.
Yeah.
Edge rusher, those guys are going to have to play snaps throughout the course of the game. And Chris, you and I know it's the NFL. Guys get hurt, guys get banged up, even more so now in a 17-game season with an extra round of playoffs as well, too. You need some more depth in that role. So I do think free agency is an option. I think I might have given you this take back like around the combine on one of the podcasts here.
Okay.
But I think the two positions in the NFL draft just about every single year, and there's the occasional one-off years where there's exceptions, but I think the two positions pretty much in the NFL draft now, and it's been this way for about 5-ish years, give or take, and I don't see it ending anytime soon. The two position groups that I think you can get the most instant impact guys in the draft. So the position groups that are the deepest with guys that can come in and have impact in year one are wide receiver and edge rusher. It was like,
I agree.
It was like 15 years ago, Chris, right? When you and I were in middle school and high school, everybody wanted to be a middle linebacker or a running back, right? Those were the two positions, middle linebacker and running back. Well, that has evolved now and that has changed. Everybody wants to be a wide receiver and everybody wants to go hit the quarterback. Everyone wants to be an edge rusher and everyone wants to go make plays on the outside. There are, I think, 8 to 12, 9 to 13 guys in this wide receiver class, Chris Carter, that could step right in. And I just made a self-deprecating joke there, and I think it went way over your head.
No, I heard it. I was going to give you a break.
Guys.
Yeah. I heard
9
it.
to 13 wide receivers in this class that can have an instant impact and will be impactful year one as rookies. I think 8 or 9 edge rushers in this class that will be impactful, that can play a real role as rookies. So if there's a Melvin Ingram type move to be made, obviously I'd be all about that in free agency. But that's one of the positions I don't mind leaving to the draft. Like I really want the Steelers to sign a safety here in the next couple weeks. I would really like the Steelers to add another wide receiver here so that they don't need 2 of them in the draft. But edge rusher, if you tell me right now it's going to be Watt, it's going to be Highsmith, it's going to be Avery, and it's going to be one guy that they get in the draft, it's going to be those 4. I can roll with that. It's not the greatest depth in the world, but it also wouldn't have me panicking or nervous.
Right, I agree with that assessment, and there's always guys that can slip around. Like Quincy Roche, I still don't know why they let him go. I do know why. They thought that they could sneak him on their practice squad without him getting scraped, and it came back to bite him. But he was a guy that a lot of people were projecting maybe second or third round. And he fell all the way down to late in the draft. So there are always things that you could do here. But I look at available free agents as far as some of the better guys available. Of course, the first round of edge rushers are all gone. But a guy who could be an interesting guy to kick the tires on is Takkarist McKinley. He was just with the Browns, was a former first round pick by the Falcons, and we all know Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin, they prefer to get guys fresh off of their rookie contracts. He's only 1 year out of his rookie contract with the Falcons. So he's 2 years out now once the season starts. But point being, he's 26. You could keep him around and say, hey, you're not coming in here with the pedigree of a Melvin Ingram, because I think part of it is I've always thought Melvin Ingram thought he was going to take that spot from Alex Highsmith. I'm pretty sure the Steelers told him, hey, that's his spot and it's him and TJ and you're here to back them up. And he was probably saying, sure thing, nobody. I'll earn that spot. And then when he didn't, it was like, oh, okay, this isn't what I thought. I got to get out of here.
Right.
But Takkarist McKinley, he ain't no Melvin Ingram. He's a guy that could fit that bill, and he's not the only guy. I know one guy is Rasheem Green, but he's more of a traditional defensive end. We all know the Steelers like more outside linebacker type of guys. But I just think adding one more player like that would be smart before the NFL draft. And
I agree.
Also, and we talked about this on Steeler Nation Radio with you and Moats on Monday, the possibility of adding after the draft. There's no rule that says you have to get them right now. Especially when, like, Tyrann Mathieu different. Tyrann Mathieu going to have a team before the NFL draft. We're just waiting to see who it's going to be. But for a lot of these guys, they're waiting around. They don't have teams that are heavily courting them. So it's time. So this way you can say, okay, we filled our needs in the draft. Now we're going back into free agency and we're signing these guys. So I think that could end up being the move here, but keeping an eye on some of those edge prospects. I know Jadeveon Clowney's out there, but guys, come on, no, that ain't the move.
I'm good. I'm good on that. I've seen that fish before.
Exactly, but I do think that and the idea of a Takkarist McKinley type of ad would be only if the Steelers didn't go and address it with a decent pick in this NFL draft class. Yeah,
and I'm with you on that. And hey, I guess you and I might think a decent pick is a second or a third rounder, at worst a fourth rounder. Right. Maybe they're looking at it and they're saying, hey, we got Roche in the 6th round last year, a guy that we really liked. We just weren't able to keep him. And, we thought we could stash him on the practice squad. But that's the real, I do like what you said there, because you don't have to address that ahead of the draft. We're in that second wave of free agency right now. Mm-hmm. There's a third and fourth wave of free agency. I mean, there's what happens after the draft as well too, and then there's that next wave once you get there's always a couple surprise cuts and things like that after OTAs, when around the time that you're getting ready for training camp in the preseason. So yeah, I don't look at edge rusher the same way that I do strong safety, right? Where I'm like, okay, all right, are we going to make a move here? What are we doing, guys? Come on, get something done. Even with wide receiver, where I'm kind of sitting there right now and I'm like, man, there's some names out there, but even wide receiver, you can wait until after the draft as well too. That feels like probably the shrewd move right now if you're Kevin Colbert and company, and who knows, obviously Kevin Colbert after the draft, he's going to be done as general manager. But
Right.
I feel like strong safety is the position that you want to have figured out in the next 3 weeks. Everything else, edge rusher depth, wide receiver depth, maybe another running back to add to the room there. You don't have to be in a rush to get those things done. You can now be patient and see how the draft plays out first.
A guy that I think could be one of those later round steals that could fit this edge rusher type of situation is Noah Burks of Wisconsin. And he's a guy. He's not a heralded, because I'm not looking at this and thinking, oh, they're going to get Boye Mafe in the second round. Like I'm not pie in the sky in the edge rusher pick. They're really great at edge rusher right now. The only thing that they're going in is getting depth. Unless they wanted to make a luxury pick and get a guy like that, and it's like, okay, great, you made that happen, but you got other needs that you need to strengthen up on here. But when you look at Noah Burks from Wisconsin, 6'2", around 245, he has the pedigree of a smart defender, good tackler, not an outstanding player. He's not going to be the most athletic, but he's technical, he's sound. He helps as a guy who can help cover the flat. He helps in a run defense and turning the play back to other teammates to hold down the edge. And I'm not saying it has to be Noah Burks, but there are guys out in this draft class that are like that you could be diamond in the rough. Hey, because again, if you draft a Noah Burks, you're getting him in maybe the 6th round. If you're looking at that, so if you're getting him in the 6th round, you're not asking him to start this year. You're saying, hey, buddy, we got TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith,
right,
and Avery as the primary options. You're there when these guys need a break. Get used to special teams, and we'll see you out there if you are in your spot. And that's the shot I think they need to take an edge rusher. But people talking about spending big, I just think that's a little much.
No, I'm with you. And you could just spend that money more wisely, because again, I think it's pretty clear that it's going to be TJ Watt and it's going to be Alex Highsmith. If Melvin Ingram didn't take Alex Highsmith's role last year, I mean, we spend Von Miller money to get a guy like that, and those guys are gone now. Yeah, there's a time to do shrewd business, Mr. Carter, and then there's a time to be patient. And you're teetering on that line right now, right? Like another couple days, and it's fully just, all right, let's be patient. We don't have to rush this. Let's see how the draft plays out. And then we'll still know exactly what type of money we have after that to go and kind of make these final moves. I think at edge rusher, you're absolutely right, because you're set with your starters.
Yes.
You love TJ Watt. I mean, you put a big
He's
old
the best.
diamond.
He's the
you
best.
put a big old diamond ring on that finger last summer, and you like Alex Highsmith. You want to go on a 3rd or 4th date here. You want to go to the dance. You want to take him to the prom. You like him a lot. You don't have to panic after that. Avery's nice depth. You need another piece there too, but that can wait. That has plenty of time. Just figure out this strong safety thing, will you?
That is the big thing. And I took a break from talking about strong safety because I've been talking about it so much over the last few weeks. So we didn't, so I wanted to give y'all a break because I like to diversify my show and I don't want it to just be me hammering down the same topic every day. But we will get back to Tyrann Mathieu, Terrell Edmunds, whatever is it today. And it was interesting. I will acknowledge Aditi Kinkhabwala coming out and says that Tyrann Mathieu is more inclined to pick the Steelers because he likes Mike Tomlin and there's some elements there, which we told you on this very show months ago, or I guess a month ago, whenever they hired Brian Flores. I'm like, look, people already love Mike Tomlin. People want to play for Brian Flores. There's some aspects there that can help you with free agency, and we may see it with Tyrann Mathieu. And she also, Aditi Kinkhabwala, of course, of NFL Network, she also pointed out, hey, Terrell Edmunds still is, there's an offer out to him. He's still not out of place. So lots of things that can happen at strong safety. We will keep you updated with that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Wes, thanks so much for joining us. You're always a treasure here to have on the show with your takes, your information, and your comedy. We appreciate you, man. Let me know where they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, on Twitter, at Wesley Euler. I host the Steelers Blitz on SNR with Arthur Moats. You can listen to us live at noon, iHeartRadio, Steelers.com, Steelers app, iHeart app. You can also subscribe to our show podcast feed, Steelers Blitz, wherever you get your podcasts. I also host the SNR Steelers Week in Review podcast that you could get, weekly podcast on the Steelers Network now as well, too. And Ears and Beers, if you are a tortured WVU soul like me, and you need 13 to 9 more podcasts to listen to, Ears and Beers, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube as well.
They do a great job, Wes and Adam. We have them both here on the show quite often. Thanks, Wes, for joining me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Again, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to get more of our content. That's Monday through Friday daily here on the show, as well as our breaking news updates when they happen on our YouTube channel. If you want to support us even further, go on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment. Do both of those at the same time, and I get you a shout out at the end of the show. Thanks again for checking us out. We'll have Tony Serino on for our Wednesday episode. No alliteration, boo. But we will be back with him. It'll be a fun talk. And who knows, maybe the Steelers have made a move at strong safety by then. We'll see you when we're talking then.